All right, House Republicans are scrambling right now to pass President Trump's megabill before his self-imposed July 4th deadline. The measure facing a key procedural vote in the chamber today. Among the major sticking points, still concerns over the strip of Medicaid coverage for nearly 12 million Americans and adding more than $3 trillion to the deficit over a decade. The president today again urging Republicans to pass the massive tax break and spending cuts bill as Speaker Mike Johnson faces a tough task of uniting his razor-thin majority behind it. ABC News correspondent Jay O'Brien is tracking the latest on the Hill. And Jay, where do things stand right now with this procedural vote?
Yeah, Alex, we're at a standstill here. The House floor has a vote that's been going on now for more than 2 hours. It was supposed to be a quick vote, and then they were going to go on to that key procedural vote, as you said, that key procedural hurdle that would advance President Trump's massive mega bill. If it were to pass that procedural vote, then we would begin debate, and then we would move on to the final vote and final passage of this bill. But what House Republican leadership are doing right now is keeping this vote before that procedural vote open so that they can have the time to work on their holdouts, because they have more than a dozen holdouts, some moderates who don't like cuts to Medicaid, and then particularly hardline conservatives who don't like the price tag in this bill, as you were saying, who have said that if we were to get to that procedural vote, they would right now vote no, or at minimum be holdout votes, and therefore this rule, this thing that would kick off debate and finally get us on track to pass this mega bill out of the House, would fail, would be tanked. I caught up with Andy Harris, chair of the House Freedom Caucus, where a number of these members are a part of, earlier today, about what exactly they want out of President Trump, who's been hosting these ongoing negotiations at the White House, and out of Speaker Johnson, who's been so critically involved in trying to wrangle his House Republican conference together to pass this. Here's what he said. The president wants this passed now. Are you standing in his way? Sounds like you are.
What does he want passed now? He wants Senate version or the House version?
He wants a bill on his desk to sign by Friday.
Well, then call the Senate back in town, because it can't get passed by Friday unless the Senate's in town.
Now, look, that idea of calling the Senate back in town to pass some kind of rewritten bill out of the House is a non-starter with Speaker Johnson. He and other House Republican leaders have said that this bill is going to be passed out of their chamber as is. And what we've heard from some other holdouts at this hour, Alex, is that they are open to potentially supporting this bill in its current form if they get some assurances out of the White House about how this bill will be implemented, and even some assurances about executive orders in the future, and even some future legislation. So those discussions are what are being had right now.
Well, and Jay, I mean, I think the big question is, with so many Republicans kind of on the fence right now, I mean, could this measure still face more proposed changes without bringing the Senate back into this?
Well, you can't change it without bringing the Senate back in. And so what those holdouts have signaled they've wanted, Ralph Norman, one of those key holdouts who was a holdout on this bill even when it passed the House the first time in May before it was kicked over to the Senate, just gaggled with reporters out here moments ago. And he seemed to indicate that the discussions being had at the White House, and now with administration officials who have shuttled up from the White House here to Capitol Hill, including Russ Vought, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, are talking about how this bill will be implemented, and in theory, cost-cutting mechanisms in the implementation of this bill. But it looks like right now they're just getting promises, not anything that's necessarily down on paper, and certainly not rewrites to this legislation. But obviously these negotiations, Norman says, are going to be playing out for hours as the House floor sits in a standstill, and this vote that I was talking about remains open on the floor, not gavelled out, Alex.
All right, Jay O'Brien, thank you, sir.